Hello, and good evening to everyone. So, if you remember in the last class, I have discussed about the pre-romantic age, how this transition page, which also overlaps with this Enlightenment age, as well as with the pre-romantic age, actually paves the way for this romantic age. So, I have told you that just after neoclassical, it's not that romantic age all of a sudden emerged to the forefront. It was the phase of transition which has actually paved the way for Romantic age. So I will be discussing about the Romantic age in the class. Now, in this this rise of Romanticism is very much associated with the philosophy of that time. But before I will go into the philosophy itself, I will talk about the timeline. So, neoclassical age, we have seen that from 1660 with the Restoration till 1795, it is almost a neoclassical age. Okay, again, you will see from 1770 to 1785 Enlightenment age overlapping with the neoclassical age. Then the Romantic age from 1785 to 1830 either. You can say or 1837 because in 1837 Victoria came to the throne. She became the queen. That's why we bound this Romantic age into the Victoria's beginning as an English queen. So this is what we actually do, and this is the timeline, how it progresses. So from 1837 until the death of Queen Victoria, it is Victorian. Now let us come to this rise of Romanticism. So as I have told you that romantic thoughts and Romanticism was very much influenced by the ideas of Immanuel Kant. Why it is so? Because, see, earlier what I have told you while I was discussing the Enlightenment age, that every philosopher, whether it is Hume, whether it is Descartes, or the others like John Locke, they are all concerned about the reason. No one was giving any kind of priority to imagination or sensibility. They are all concerned about reason, that only because of reason we can prove anything. And that's why Descartes said that I think, therefore I am. He's trying to prove our existence via this reason and fact. Okay. But Kant, for the first time, what he did is that he not only questioned the philosophy of John Locke, but also gave this very important idea of, imagination. Okay. And sensibility. Immanuel Kant, who is arguably the most influential philosopher of Romanticism, talks about reason as well as the subjectivity or the sensibility. Now, according to Kant, the mind has no content. And if you remember, this philosopher, John Locke, what he's saying? He's saying that human mind, a child at the time of his birth, his mind is a kind of tabula rasa, and with that is a blank slate, and with the sense experience he gains in his lifetime, that slate has been written down with sense and experiences. Okay, so at the birth, the mind is clean sheet, and Locke has had said sense experience inscribes on it. Okay, now Kant is critiquing, he is making a critique of this view. How? According to Kant, the mind has no content until it interacts with the world. However, the mind does have innate formal structures. Okay, some innate formal structures which we have by birth or templates. You can say that formal structure adds templates also. So, templates that order the world that is perceived. It's not that our mind is tabula rasa altogether. We have some innate formal structure which actually allows us to gain the sensory experiences. Okay. Now John Locke was talking about the theory of empiricism, that via experiences we gain everything. Okay. By birth we have nothing. We are blank slate. But with experience we gain the ideas how to live in this world and how to live a prosperous life. So those are actually um, how we started to live in this world. because of the experiences. That blank slate is filled by those experiences. But this Kant is actually saying that empiricism is good. Okay, we are, I mean, somehow slave of this empiricism. But then it is only because of the receptive capacity. And this capacity, according to Kant, is sensibility. Now, when you are talking about sensibility, you will obviously talk about imagination. So he, for the first time, introduced this term in philosophy, the imagination. And that's how the Romantic authors were very much influenced by the thought of Immanuel Kant. So it is not only because of the receptive capacity that the world appears to us as ordered, for example, the formal construct of time and space. Okay, it's not that because of this only that we interact with this world. The mind also has the power to synthesize its perceptions through the capacity of imagination. Okay, so we have some innate perception with us, and we try to communicate with our surrounding and nature. We synthesize the perception through the capacity of imagination. This is what Kant said. Okay. It is through the imagination that we are able to see what is common in external objects. For example, suppose you have never been to America. How you perceive America? Through imagination, no? That okay, everything will be like this. I have seen in the movie, so things will be like this and that. So the place that you have never seen, you have never experienced, but you are still making an imagination of that particular place via your sensibility, no sense, no. So it's not that every time you will every time you are using your reason and fact. Sometimes your imagination also plays a vital role, and this is what Kant is saying. Okay. Finally, the mind includes a yet higher capacity which Kant call understanding. Okay, through sensibility and imagination, we understand, perceive things. Okay, so this is how he came up with this idea of imagination. So his famous works are Critique of Judgment. Do remember from net point of view, these works are important. Okay, Critique of Judgment by Kant, and then Critique of Pure Reason, then Critique of Practical Reason. These are all the works by Kant. And John Locke, on the other hand, gave this idea of tabula rasa as well as the theory of empiricism. That was about philosophy. Now let us come to the early Romanticism. So in early Romanticism, you will see that the American as well as French Revolution plays a very vital role. On the one hand, you will see that the Romantic authors are very much supportive of this French Revolution. Okay, they want to, I mean, support this French Revolution. They always used to write in their poems. Also, you will see in the poems of Robert Southey, even in the poems of Shelley and Wordsworth about revolutions. Okay, so the American and French Revolution stand in the political background of early Romantic thinkers like Wordsworth and Coleridge. But then the only difference is that they were not more, I mean, they were not talking about the American Revolution in great detail, or not in such a way like they have talked about French Revolution. Why? Because America was the colony of Britain. Now they cannot say that they have just now lost a particular colony because America got its freedom from Britain. No, I will talk about this while I will be teaching you American history, but I'm just telling you for the sake of your understanding that America got its freedom from Britain. It was a colony of Britain. That is the reason why these British poets, they are not glorifying that much American Revolution as they are glorifying this French Revolution. Okay. The aristocracies that had previously controlled Europe were falling. Okay, with this French Revolution and American Revolution, there was a kind of topsy-turvy kind of situation in the hierarchy. So the aristocracies that had previously controlled Europe were falling. The middle class was growing, and power was increasingly shifting to the common people. And that's why, see, Wordsworth is doing what? In preface to the lyrical ballad, he is saying that the language of poetry should be the language of the rustic people, the common man. Common man at that time was gaining more and more power. It makes perfect sense then that Wordsworth poetry and his criticism of poetry should be aimed at common man rather than at educated aristocrats. Okay? Now, for Wordsworth and Coleridge, both, this meant a turn away from elevated language and subject matter and a turning toward spontaneity and motion. This is what, and this is how Wordsworth actually defined poetry. He said poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling recollected in tranquility. Like Longinus, now see, Romantics were very much influenced by Longinus also. Because if you remember, Longinus has, in his sublimity, he said that a work will achieve sublimity only when it will transport you to that world, to that time when it was written, or about which it is talking. Okay? So when you are talking about this transportation from one place to another place, this is a pure imagination. And that's why Longinus, the Romantics were very much influenced by the thoughts of Longinus and his work on the sublime. Do remember this. These are very important facts. So, like Longinus, the Romantics believed that a poet was born with a great soul, but unlike him, they believed that ordinary language was the proper vehicle for the communication for that soul. For a poet was a man speaking to men. This is what was said in his preface to the Lyrical Ballads. For Wordsworth, this meant rural and pastoral language. Okay, the common language meant that rural and pastoral language. For he believed that the most important knowledge came from communing with nature. For Coleridge, it simply meant the language spoken by most people at ordinary times. Now, another major shift took place in what people considered the aim of poetry. Earlier ages had considered poetry to exist in order to change people's behavior. The Romantics threw that out of the window. According to them, existed purely as a form of expression, particularly the expression of intense emotion. Hence, Wordsworth's classic definition of poetry as emotion recollected in tranquility. Now, when Wordsworth is saying a poetry is an spontaneous overflow of power feeling, he's trying to say that while we are perceiving things, while we are looking at the nature, everything that we see come to us in a very flourishing way. Okay, so it is a kind of spontaneous overflow. All the emotions are coming at a particular time, but you need to make yourself calm. Okay, recollected in tranquility, recollected in calmness. Go back to your home, sit there, be relaxed, be calm, then try to recollect what you have seen in nature while you were outside, and then perceive a poem. This is what Wordsworth said. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. So it is a spontaneous overflow. You do not need to, I mean, and what Eliot said, that turning loose of emotion. Do not go with the emotion. That emotion which is overflowing, control that, sit properly, relax, be calm, then then start recollecting those ideas, and then you will write a good poem. Okay, this is what he mean by emotion recollected in tranquility. Now, let us see the timeline of Romantic Age. So, initially, we all know that neoclassicals were more concerned about the aristocratic people, feudal system, but with these revolutions, such as the American Revolution and French Revolution, the proletariat or the working class people, the noble savage came into the limelight for the first time. American Revolution, very important event that led to Romanticism. French Revolution, again, very important event because French Revolution was very much inspired by American Revolution. French people for the first time got something, this idea at least, that we can overthrow the monarchy from this American Revolution itself. They have got this idea from American Revolution. Do remember this. Then what followed is that, everyone was very happy that, okay, now we have thrown away Louis XIV. Now we will live in a democratic world. But then who comes next? Robespierre, the autocrat. He begins his reign of terror. He killed so many people. And finally, this has been stopped by Napoleon after the, death of or execution of Robespierre. Napoleon came to the power. He somehow united the French. Okay, he arose in them the idea of nationality. Okay, nationalism. One important act that was there in during the Romanticism was habeas corpus. A writ of habeas corpus is used to bring a prisoner or other detainee before the court to determine if the person's imprisonment or detention is lawful. So even, I mean, without telling you that why they are arresting you, they can imprison you. This was the habeas corpus. Okay, this was a law made by the, I mean, British government. They can detain you from anywhere without even telling you what was your crime. And then a trial will go on, and then they will let you know what was your crime. Then Catholic Emancipation Law, which took place in 1829. Blue Stocking Society. See, this was the phase of rise of feminism. If you remember, Mary Shelley belonged to this Romanticism age, and her mother was just before her, Mary Wollstonecraft. She has written this wonderful work on feminism. You all know that. Okay, vindication of the rights of women. So, Blue Stocking Society and rise of feminism. Uh, I mean, Elizabeth Montagu was very famous figure associated with Blue Stocking Society. So, this was the also the phase of rise of feminism. Okay, this was the early, very building kind of constructing phase of feminism. Industrialization has been criticized by John Ruskin and even by Wordsworth. You will see every now and then. Luddites. Now, Luddites was a kind of, I mean, is now a blanket term used to describe people who dislike new technology. They dislike it because for them, they say that, because of this coming of this industrialization, we are cutting the forest, we are cutting the trees. But its origin date back to the early 19th century labor movement that railed against the ways that mechanized manufacturers and their unskilled laborers undermine the skilled craftsmen of the day. Okay, they are talking about also unemployment and also the effect of mechanization or new technology or industrialism. Another important thing that you will see in this age, the rise of utilitarianism. Okay, the idea of utilitarianism, which was initiated by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. And this idea of utilitarianism, if you know about this novel Hard Times by Charles Dickens, so Dickens actually criticized this idea of utilitarianism given by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Now, what was this idea? Utilitarianism believes that we human beings are very much guided by our happiness. So we try to do those things we try to utilize those things, or we try to do something from which we can gain happiness. Otherwise, won't try to do anything from where we have no fun, no utility, no help at all. We do not try to do that thing. So human beings are very kind of selfish. They run after the happiness, and for that reason, they try to utilize each and everything. Okay. So why this is, negative kind of principle or idea? Because see, utilitarianism also affects the labor class of that time. They were, forced to work just for the sake of the capitalist happiness, for the sake of the happiness of capitalist society. Okay, they were working, enormously from 12 hours to 18 hours. For whom? For the happiness of the capitalist class. And the capitalist class are utilizing them at any cost. Okay, at the cost of even their life. So that's why this is a kind of negative idea that has been propagated at that time. Then scientific discovery were also going on. Means these discoveries started with the Enlightenment itself, but it goes on to this Romantic age. J.B. Priestley discovered oxygen during this Romantic time. Now, what was the effect of French Revolution? See, I'm not talking about American Revolution because I will talk about it in great detail in my American lecture on the American literature and all. But the effects of French Revolution on British life. So the French Revolution that began in 1789 altered the political landscape of the feudal Europe irrevocably. I told you about this, that how feudal system collapsed with this French Revolution. Centuries of oppression came to an end. bringing about great changes in the social and political framework of France. This revolution, which lasted from 1789 to 1799, affected and altered the rest of Europe also. People everywhere were inspired with democratic ideals and the power of king, and the aristocrats came crumbling down. Nowhere in Europe could royalty and nobility ever again take their powers for granted after the uprising of the peasants in France. So everyone was scared. All the monarchies in Europe were scared after this event. That if this can happen to this French country, it can happen to us also. So they became very, I mean, cautious about it. There were several causes for French Revolution: socio-economic causes, political causes, as well as intellectual causes. The aristocratic structure of a society before the revolution consisted of three orders or states. The clergy constituted the first state, the nobility the second state, and the rest of the population, which was more than 95%, belonged to the third state. That is, the third state is, what do we call them? They were, I have just mentioned about them, proletariat. Okay. So the first two states enjoyed a special privilege. They do not have to pay the tax. They are living a very good, healthy life. But while the third state, which are the poor class, those who belong to this poor class, they have to pay a huge amount of tax. So the old order was thus based on privilege, nepotism, and exploitation. The lowest rung of the social ladder was occupied by the peasants. They were the majority of the country. Their lives were extremely difficult. They could never shake off the clock of poverty since they had to pay taxes to the state, the church, and the nobles. And that's how they came up with this idea of French Revolution. With the fall of Bastille, the monarch has been overthrown. The Count of Louis XIV was known for his extravagance and pomp. The king believed in the divine right theory and ruled in an arbitrary manner. Queen Marie Antoinette, who was the wife of Louis XVI, was unpopular and arrogant and irritated the already frustrated people further. This led to French Revolution. Now, French writers like Voltaire and Rousseau, they were also the philosophers, had a profound effect on the middle class. Voltaire pointed an accusing finger at several lapses in French law, which doled out harsh punishment for small offenses. His writings helped to awaken a people conscience in France. See, this is how literature can create a revolution. French Revolution was very much inspired by the work of Voltaire as well as Rousseau. In his famous book, The Social Contract, Rousseau explained that the king governed a state owing to a contract with his subject. He established the fact that the people had every right to question the ruler if he failed in his duty towards them. This reasoning inspired many thinkers of the day, and they joined the revolution. Motivated by Rousseau, they were ready to destroy the old system of government altogether. And this is what they did actually with French Revolution. They destroyed all the, old system. The American War of Independence was an inspiration to the French people. The way in which the Americans rose against the unfair taxation of the British government and their ultimate triumph acted as a great stimulus to the oppressed people of the France. All this brought matters to a boiling point, and with the attack on the state prison, the Bastille in 1789, the French Revolution began. The old order was overthrown. The French drew up a declaration called the Declaration of the Rights of Man. The concept of absolute monarchy was rejected. Thousands of royalists, priests, and nobles were killed on the street. From 1793 to 1794, there was a reign of terror by Robespierre. Louis XVI was beheaded. In the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity, more than 1 million people were cruelly butchered. The revolution came to an end in 1790. Okay, so this French Revolution actually led to this reign of terror where so many people were butchered. The first event of the revolution were well received in England. Many progressive Englishmen were happy to see France emerging from the shadow of absolute monarchy. Others were less progressive, rejoiced nonetheless in the fact that France was weakening herself by internal strife. This was the initial reaction in England. Okay, some were happy that okay, this is good that they are coming out of monarchy, but some were happy because they knew that France can be a big threat to the English Empire. So if they are going through this phase, they are weakening themselves. Now, Edmund Burke has written this work, Reflections on the Revolution in France, which sounded a note of terror. In it, he upheld the authority of the ancient institution and claimed that the revolution was a disaster. He said that even if you got freedom, there was this freedom was followed by the reign of terror, absolute chaos, and anarchy. He also pointed out that if it was not controlled, it would spread all over Europe and ruins its fine civilization. His opinions had a profound effect on the people and changed their attitude towards the revolution. A reply to Edmund Burke, was made by Thomas Paine. Okay, Thomas Paine's famous work, Rights of Man, was a reply to Edmund Burke's work. Paine, an English Quaker's son who lived in America, was a strong supporter of the American and French Revolution. He maintained that the people had the right to alter any existing government if they were not satisfied with it. These two diametrically opposite views typically represented the two extremes of English thought. The majority of the English people, however, shared Burke's anxiety about the future of Europe. Okay, so they started to support Burke that yes, ultimate freedom actually leads to chaos and anarchy. This is what happened in the case of French Revolution also. So the Napoleonic Wars affect British life in several ways. England had borrowed heavily to meet the expenses of the war. The first problem, therefore, was the huge national debt. As a result, taxes were raised, food became scarce, and there was inflation all around. After the war came to an end, nearly 500,000 soldiers and sailors were sent home. They added heavily to the long list of the unemployed. Unemployment became a serious problem for the authorities. And these all problems has been overcome only with the accession of Queen Victoria to the throne. Things became, uh, quite good. If not worse, then it was good during the Victorian era. So the French Revolution steered the British people and affected their literature in a major way. There was a complete break with the Age of Reason, and a new kind of literature known as the Romantic Revival was born. The chief characteristic of the poetry of this period were closeness to nature, simplicity of style, and the employment of the language of the common man. Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey, they belong to the first generation of Romantic author. Byron, Shelley, and Keats belong to the second generation of Romantic authors. Now, Romantic poetry and novels. The poetry of the early 19th century is primarily characterized by its emphasis on a poetics of subjectivity, with the celebration of the self in a supposedly unornamental language was posited by the most well known of the Romantics, William Wordsworth. The Romantic movement in English poetry is said to have made its appearance through a co-production, that of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The title of that production is Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798. The fixing of the literary and cultural movement to such a date is not without its problems. According to some, the romantic position was evident in the works of Thomas Gray. Okay, the author of the transition phase, Thomas Gray, such as Grave and also the Graveyard School of Poetry, they actually laid the foundation for the Romantic Age as well as the Gothic fiction. Okay, so Graveyard School of Poetry was the precursor to this Gothic fiction. Now, although the form emerged in the 18th century as one of the popular genre, novel form emerged in the Augustan age and even in the age of Enlightenment itself. But it came to a full kind of glorification or limelight with the works of Jane Austen and Walter Scott. Okay, their works are novel in a complete sense. They choose to depart from the examples of Fielding, Sterne, and Smollett and devise their own models to engage their fictional enterprises. So if you know, while Jane Austen was dealing with the theme of money, marriage, and social life, Walter Scott was dealing with the theme of historical events. So that's it for today's class. I hope you have understood. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. In the next class, I will be beginning with Victorian age. Thank you.